Vegetation monitoring is important when gathering information about an environment and to try and answer some questions on the change in above ground biomass. The main focus of this protocol is to provide evidence into the effects of climate change and other environmental factors on species growth, mortality and function. So how to set up a vegetation plot? There should be around 6 vegetation plots, all 1 hectare in size, set up in the core study area. If there is an elevational gradient, then plots should be stratified with 2 plots at each of the low, medium and high elevation areas. If there is no gradient, plots should be randomly located. The plots also should be placed in a buffered zone up to 500 metres and at least 100 metres away from all access points and trails. The plots should be relatively on homogeneous soil with no water bodies. The plot corners should initially be marked out with a flag stake and the walking conditions should be noted throughout. If the plot is on soil that is not homogeneous and there are water bodies and other streams and such things, then the plot needs to be relocated. It is also very important that no vegetation is cut while marking the plot. 2 baselines should be marked at the 2 sides of the square at a 90-degree angle, and then 11 perpendicular lines each 100 metres apart. The first and second baselines are the most important, as they are the lines from which all the others are measured and checked. It is important that the 2 lines are precisely 100 metres long and are at the correct bearing, perpendicular to each other. So starting at the baseline, place mark stakes every 20 metres. The rest of the lines should be marked out in the exact same way. The second baseline is to be marked exactly the same way, starting from 90 degrees from the first baseline. The rest of the 1 hectare plot is to be marked out from the 2 baselines by placing 10 lines parallel to the second baseline and perpendicular to the first baseline. When a tree is near the baseline, it needs to be determined whether it is within the plot or not. This is usually determined if more than 50% of the tree is inside the base or not. There is an extensive list of things that we need to take in order to do different parts of the monitoring. The main items do include, though, the compass, a measuring tape, stakes, measuring poles, nails, hammer, clipboard, pen and paper, GPS flags and maps. So to do the first census, after all the stakes are in place and the GPS locations of all the 4 corners are noted, vegetation plots must be censused and measured within a 4 to 5 week period during the region's dry season. The vegetation plot should then be broken down into 21 smaller subplots of 20 by 20 metres to make surveying easier. The diameter tape should then be checked for stretching so that you can tell whether your markings are actually all correct. Then all stems equal to or larger than 10 centimetres must be measured, painted and tagged within the plot. A measuring stick should be used to measure 1.3 metres from the base of the tree, and any loose bark or moss should be removed. The diameter to the nearest millimetre is then recorded. The point of measurement should be marked with a crayon on the tree and then painted. An aluminium tag is also nailed downwards into the tree at 1.6 metres. Continue this with the rest of the trees in the subplot and then move on into the next subplot. Lianas should also be measured 1.3 metres from their last rooting position and painted just as the trees are painted. If the liana is flattened in shape, the average of the smallest and larger parts are recorded if they are equal to or larger than 10 centimetres in diameter. The X and Y coordinates are also measured by recording the distance of the trees from the stake at the centre of the subplot using a sighting compass. Do this for all the subjects. For the recensus of the vegetation plot, the vegetation plots must be recensused during the same 4 to 5 week dry period of the season, just as the previous census was. All of the stems that were tagged in the first census must be remeasured, and all new recruits will need to be identified, measured and tagged and have their location, which is the bearing and distance, recorded as well. The previous census data should be printed out and then taken back into the field for the recensus. All damaged and missing tags need to be replaced, and the death of dead trees needs to be recorded. You also need to remeasure the lianas as well, just like we did in the first census. The bearing and distance of the new trees and lianas should be calculated whilst they are identified, measured and tagged as well.